Bill, yeah, he takes a cab to this party, and the cab comes to a gate, and there's two guys out there, and he walks up and gives them the password, which is
Fidelio. Italian for fidelity.
So they're like, very good, sir. We'll take you up to the house. And goes up to the house, gives the password there. He puts on his mask. He goes into this room.
And this is what I find so profoundly disturbing about this scene. There's no catering. You notice he goes the guy shows him to the orgy. And there's no buffet table. Where's the lobster? Where's the guacamole? There should be a spread, right? No, it's right this way, sir. It turns a corner and there's this weird quasi satanic rite going on. I'm like, did everybody already eat?
They're like, we're gonna have a very elaborate orgy, but empty stomachs for everyone. We can't
it's
risk.
More sanitary.
Yeah, exactly.
Way. The cleanup is a lot easier.
Yeah, it's just so wrong. That's disgusting. So, yeah, it is a very disturbing, ritual kind of oming.
Oming?
Yeah, we're om. Yeah, exactly.
That's what you mean.
Yes. Sorry.
It was nudity and they were oming. It was awful. What I really hated was the oming.
Well, and the guy has there's a main guy. Okay, so there's a circle of women and there's a guy in the middle, and he's got one of those incense things
right.
that Catholic churches have.
Yeah,
it's so weird.
Yeah. One of my great mentors, Robert, who got me really one of my mentors as a teacher, who's a brilliant film professor. Robert von Dasanowski, I'll say his name. He's a brilliant man. He teaches in Colorado. He always told me that this scene really bothers him because of Catholic iconography in this scene of this bizarre ritual.
Yeah. It's so bizarre. Yeah. I mean, part of me is oh, this is too crazy to be real. And then I'm like, I bet there's just some nasty, freaky elite people who are really doing this stuff.
So, yeah, man, Eyes Wide Shut party, huh? Go to that Fidelio party tomorrow night, huh?
No, I don't think they're that, giddy about it, but
Of course not, because there's no snacks. I hate those parties, man. There's, sex for 3 hours, and then at 10:30, they bring on the food. Oh, gosh. Make sure you have a big lunch, okay? That's what I suggest, okay? You got to time it just right.
Well, you know what? It is in the middle of the night, so maybe they
It is 2:30,
they're trying to save money that way. People would be sleeping right now, so we're not going to cater.
The mahi is right from Hawaii, so we fly it in. It doesn't arrive until 4 a.m. Worth it, guys. Worth it, all right? Because after an all-night orgy, you really get the munchies. So, the sun comes up, the mahi's there, and,
Oh, my gosh.
Greatest party ever. Fidelio, woo!
Wow.
Fidelio bros.
Okay. But I don't want to, understate how really disturbing this whole thing is.
That's why I'm being silly about it. No, this is a very upsetting scene, listeners, of course. And I think anybody who's seen the film knows what we're talking about. This is, there's not a lot of dialogue. And interestingly enough, that is, it's Cruz in this very strange, ornate mask. And he's surrounded by a sea of people in strange, ornate masks. Some of them see Bill. They kind of give him this nod. It's strange because... why do they notice him? But he sticks out immediately.
That is the thing. Why do they notice him?
Yeah,
I have no idea.
Oh, I have an idea for that.
Oh, you do? Okay. So then there is one of the prostitutes, I guess. I don't really know what to call these women because I don't know really who they are, except that Victor calls them that later in the film. So, okay. She comes up to him and she's like, what are you doing here? You don't belong here. You have to leave.
And to be clear, everyone at this party, whether they are in a tuxedo, presumably the men are all in tuxedo, masks, and capes. The women, even though they're stark nakers, they are wearing these ornate masks.
Yeah. So you don't see anybody's face.
Yeah. So it is very, very curious that that this particular woman singles him out. Although there's a moment where someone, and you pointed this out, where someone is nodding at Bill. Bill returns the nod silently during the ritual. And then later, Bill is just walking around at this orgy. And I don't know, to be clear about this, if those of you listening, oh my gosh, they're talking about the orgy. Here's the thing, listeners. For those of you who haven't seen this film, you're I don't know if I really want to see this. Here's the thing. With the nudity in this movie, the sexual content in this movie, the emphasis is fear. This is not titillating. This is not meant to be erotic. I don't think on any planet you would call this an erotic film. It's disturbing. It's meant to be upsetting. It's meant to be kind of scary. And that is the feeling that Kubrick gives this. The music is eerie. There's a good deal of shadow in the lighting. So there's something nightmarish about all of this. The feeling is that you should not be seeing this. Bill should not be here. The sense of like, what is this guy doing here? But he's also fascinated, not aroused, but fascinated by this world that he should not be in. He's a total tourist here. So just to be clear about that, I'm trying to be as tongue in cheek about this because I love the film and I don't want to drown us in talking about the brilliance of it. But the orgy scene is upsetting because it's supposed to be upsetting, and that's always been my thing about this movie. Like, look, I know people like don't want to see a movie that has this stuff in it, but Kubrick is not being stupid here. He's not trying to like make some sexy movie like everybody thought he was. This is as dark as it gets for Bill. This is a world that he should not be here. He is a tourist in hell, and he needs to get out of here.
He does, and they do say like, you don't belong here. Like,
yeah.
So then they bring Bill back into the weird like ceremony room, and
so the model warns him, "You need to get out of here."
She warns him a couple times.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's very, it's very, very, very peculiar. So it's interesting. This is the one shot of the film that doesn't involve Dr. Bill. Tom Cruise isn't in it. There's a shot of presumably the more chaste part of this orgy where it's just folks slow dancing naked with masks on. And you see what's going on. And Nick Nightingale is blindfolded and he's being escorted out. It's the only scene in the film.
I didn't notice him being escorted out there.
He's blindfolded and he's being, very forcefully escorted out of the orgy. Because they're like, you schmuck, you invited this guy. You're the reason this guy with the cab is outside. And we have this intruder here.
You told our secret.
Right. Yeah. So it's curious because again, like, if this is all from Bill's perspective, then why is this there? That's an interesting detail. So Cruise, as Dr. Bill is being led down this hallway, which we immediately see what he's seeing, and it's a big uh-oh moment where in some of the movies piano theme kicks in, which is very eerie, and Bill he's basically, the jig is up, everybody has stopped having sex, which I'm sure was like, shake the come on into the room,
we have an intruder.
Yeah, I mean, is there like, I don't know, is like alarm for that? That's a whole other movie, right? So Okay, people, it's over. We have an intruder. Intruder time. You know the drill. So Dr. Bill is led into this room where he's surrounded by these masked figures, and it could not be more intense because nobody's taking their mask off. Everybody's masked, and as you said, a key detail: the color red of the door. Well, the head of this thing, who's identified in the credits as Red Cloak, played by Leon Vitali. He is wearing a red cloak. He has a golden mask. Like, obviously, there's all sorts of connotations with that biblically. Thinking of like, the
what? He's the devil.
A version of the devil.
Yeah.
The equivalent of the devil for this scene.
Yes.
To make that obviously
I would
very
agree
clear.
With that.
I don't think you would disagree with that. And so it's a pretty amazing sequence. Because if anything, whatever you feel about the orgy scene. Here, I mean, the movie is like splashed us with a cold shot of water, and it's that way for Dr. Bill as well. The jig is up. He's been found out. It's very theatrical. It's very much like evil pageantry, where he demands him. He demands the password.
The password.
Bill thinks he knows it. Mm-hmm. What's the other password? Of course he doesn't know it. And it's like the easiest trick. Of course there's no second password, you idiot.
How'd you get in here?
Clearly Bill hasn't been to enough orgies. Doesn't know how it works.
Yeah.
So it gets ugly because, and it's a detail that really bothered me last night. Like, they're telling him to take off all of his clothes as a punishment. And you're going like, are they going to molest him, to put it one way? Are they going to beat him? Are they going to kill him? What is about to happen?
What are they going to do?
It's very upsetting.
Yeah,
it's so upsetting. And, I love the way Cruise is playing it because this is a guy who's used to being in control. This is a guy who's used to, like, you just show your little past, you say that I'm a doctor, you look them in the eye, you will always get your way, it'll always end with a handshake. This is a guy who nothing is working. He is about to die or be raped or worse, if that's possible. And what happens? From a balcony above, the prostitute or whatever.
The one who's been warning
the
him.
one who's been warning him, who's wearing this giant peacock mask. She says, "I shall redeem him." And by the way, this fascinates me. So 2 years ago now, it was 2 years ago now, it was revealed after over a decade of secrecy that this character was voiced by Cate Blanchett. Because she was a friend of Kidman's, and it was established that even though she's Australian, she can do an American accent really well, which is funny because this movie is supposed to take place in New York and most of the characters are European, so figure that out. And the movie was shot in England, so, one of the criticisms of the movie, like, it doesn't feel like New York. Well, it's supposed to feel like a dream, you idiots. The movie's a masterpiece.
Wow,
so anyway,
okay.
So there we go.
Tell us how you really feel.
How I really feel. The critics are wrong. That's how I felt in 99. So anyway... Yeah, so it's very theatrical the way it happens, where she says, I will redeem him, I'll take his place. And a character appears who looks almost like a vulture. He has a vulture-like beak. That's his mask, and he's shown in silhouette, takes her away. It's like a Grimm's fairy tale. Yeah. It's bizarre. It's
very strange.
It's
and
very,
they're
very
like,
strange.
Okay. And he's like, what's going to happen to her? And they're basically like, it's done.
Red Cloak says, her fate has been decided.
You get out of here.
You ever tell anyone.
Don't ever come
dire
back.
consequences. Yeah.
It's
great.
Your lips are sealed and forget about this night forever.
Yeah, it's an agonizingly suspenseful scene. It's great. And then what happens? Bill just... opens the door of his apartment and he's back home. Isn't that interesting? Yeah.
Yeah. And then...
Because Zeta gets the scene of like the cab driver going, what happened, man? These people with masks and no clothes came out and they told me to get you. Like,
did he give the cab driver
the other half of the 100 that he promised him?
I know. That we don't know.
It was like, sorry, I lost it. We're going to take all my clothes. Can you like drive me to like Philly and I can just walk home?
So he walks in to his bedroom where Alice is sleeping, and she's having a nightmare, and she starts laughing hysterically, and he's like, "No, wake up! I think you're having a nightmare." And then she starts telling him about this horrible dream that she had. I don't know if we want to get into the dream because it is disturbing.
The details of the dream are very important. She tells it's a fascinating scene because, for one thing, I love this film, but man, this movie needed more Nicole Kidman. She's incredible.
I agree with that.
She's so good in this, and this scene is amazing. She's waking up from this dream and she's recalling it to her husband. She's so disturbed by the dream, and and Bill obviously just had a very upsetting night of his own, but he's listening to her tell this story, and it has very specific details about. She had a dream about
they didn't have their clothes.
They're in an abandoned city.
He went to go find clothes.
She finds the naval guy, and again, the naval officer is now laughing at her.
But then they end up having sex.
And then she's surrounded by people having sex, and
she's having sex with tons of people. But then she laughs at Dr. Bill, and then that's when he woke her up.
Yeah.
It's she goes
and it's upsetting because
the
scene began with him walking into the bedroom and she's laughing audibly in her sleep and realized that's what it was.
Mm-hmm. We were in a deserted city and our clothes were gone. We were naked. And I was terrified. And I felt ashamed. Oh, God. And I was angry because I thought it was your fault. But you rushed away to go and find clothes for us. As soon as you were gone, it was completely different. I felt wonderful. Then I was lying in a beautiful garden, stretched out naked in the sunlight. And a man walked out of the woods. He was the man from the hotel, the one I told you about. The naval officer. He stared at me. And then he just laughed. He just laughed at me.
It's so disturbing, and it's great because he's like, I got nothing to tell you. Good night. Like, how do you follow that up?
Oh, right.
And she's clearly so distressed about this dream. And I remember the first time I saw this, I remember just being just ice cold in my seat. Like, oh my gosh, was she there? Was she at the orgy?
Oh, you thought that?
That was the first time. First time I saw this film, I thought, that was she there? Is this her way of telling him? Was she somehow? Was it like
wow.
psychically there? Because the details that she tells him, they're very peculiar. They really reflect being in an abandoned city, encountering, sexual encounters that go awry. It felt like a reflection of everything that Dr. Bill had just been through,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so the first time I saw this movie, I thought, was she there? I mean, is she in this whole thing? Is she a part of this conspiracy, whatever it is? I think the answer is no, to be plain about it.
I think it's no.
I think
that's
it's
an
no.
interesting thought.
But yeah, the first time I saw this, I'm like, oh man, this is so creepy. And, and it's the way in the film literally says it in the last couple moments. It's the way dreams and reality are kind of flowing in and out of this film. And the movie never makes the distinguishment when one is the other. Because on the one hand, Bill is having those fantasies about his wife with the naval officer, and there are these hurtful fantasies to him. But, something we should be conscious of is the movie isn't telling us explicitly that it didn't happen or that it did happen.
Okay, well,
we don't really know. The movie doesn't really tell us. So he may, what we see him fantasizing.
I think it does tell us.
Well, they maybe.
Okay, know.
Because those fantasies, they may very well be flashbacks.
But they're from his mind, not hers.
Yeah, but we might be seeing something that actually happened, and then we're just seeing the way that he visualizes them.
Yeah, but when she tells the Cape Cod story, she says she was willing to risk it all, but she didn't have to.
Can we believe her?
Because she was so relieved that he left. Oh, you think she's lying to him?
If you men only knew.
Yeah, about what women fantasize about.
Yeah, but is she telling the truth? He just told her that, oh yeah, man, I was with my buddy Victor Ziegler at the party.
But yeah, he's the liar.
He is but I mean, they've been together a long time. You're saying deception can't go two ways? Oh, if you women only knew.
Yeah, but she offers him the truth willingly. She didn't have to tell him that story. I think a way to look at it is it's a game of one-upmanship, right? Because she is, on the one hand... because she thinks he just had a threesome?
No, I think he's being so puppy dog earnest in his declaration of unfailing love and fidelity. I think she's like, oh, well, you don't really know me, because here's this.
Because I do sometimes fantasize about those things. Not that she actually went through with it.
You sure?
Yeah, that's what I think happened.
Okay, all right.
I think that the thought of her cheating on him, the thought of her thinking about cheating on him is what he's thinking about. Because he's like, oh my gosh. I think he's thinking about what he thinks she was fantasizing about. But he has no idea what she was actually fantasizing about. She didn't get into explicit detail with him,
right,
about what her fantasy was, just that she was willing to just have like one night of sex with this stranger,
But considering this is a man who's obviously not only aware of his own natural charms, but aware of how beautiful his wife is, this is clearly a guy who is easily rattled at the thought of someone else being with his wife, because again, this is someone who has been so used to the very carefully built palace of a life that he's living. Yeah. So yeah, the thought of her is enough.
I'm not disagreeing with that. Yeah. I'm just saying I don't think she actually cheated on him from how she told that story. I didn't get that she was not telling him everything. But, I mean, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I need to listen to her monologue again. I don't know. Do we need to watch it for a fourth time? No.
I'm down right now.
Okay, so she gets done telling him about another dream, and they go back
And
to...
Dr. Bill's like, I got to go take another walk through New York City alone.
He's just like, I can't handle your dreams and your fantasies. You're driving me nuts.
I'm going to have another late night odyssey through New York and go to another orgy. Get this out of my system.
Oh my gosh. This is how fragile Dr. Bill is, okay? He can't even handle her thoughts, much less her actions.
Isn't that interesting? Yeah, no, this is interesting to me. I mean, look, Kubrick was married to Christiane Kubrick since 1958 until his death in 1999. He had two lovely daughters, one of which her paintings are the ones that are in the movie, and they're beautiful. This is, and he lived in Europe for a good portion of his life. Brooklyn guy. There's something, for all the things about his movie that are progressive and radical, there's something very old-fashioned about Stanley Kubrick. And I feel like this movie is, of all things, it's a love letter to marriage, to fidelity, to having, to embracing what you have, normalcy, to loving the person you're with despite all the mysteries within. There's something, for a guy who, just get off course for a second, for a guy who made movies about going to the farthest reaches of the cosmos or the horrors of war and the horrors of the human mind, his final film is about the most exotic place of all, the bedroom. And he didn't make a movie that was specifically about sex, but about the promise of sex, the excitement of sex, and also the danger of sex, which is very old-fashioned. This is there's something very, again, like this movie has a moral center, which is interesting because this movie is as cold as any film by Kubrick is cold, visually cold or emotionally cold. It is aloof at times. The characters are aloof at times, but it does have this emotional center. And a lot of that has to do with Nicole Kidman's character, because as much as she clearly enjoys taunting her husband, she's a great wife and a great woman. And the film, doesn't demonize her. She's not henpecking him. She's challenging him, and he's not up to it.
No, he's not. Because the next day he goes to work and he's sitting in his office and he's like, who's coming in this afternoon? Cancel the rest of my day. I mean, he's got some mysteries to solve, and he's going to go back to every place that he went the night before, and figure it out.
And this is when we think it's going to be a Tom Cruise movie about a guy who's going to go right the rights and take on the big guys. This is going to be like The Firm, right?
Right.
No, not at all. Nothing.
No. Nothing that you think is going to happen happens.
Yeah, not at all.
So he goes back to all the places. So where does he...
I think the first thing he does is goes back to the rainbow room.
Oh, yeah.
Where the rainbow ends.
And he returns his costume.
And this is where he learns that the guy who runs the place is pimping out his daughter, played by Lily Sobieski. And that really made me think, I'll bet he has some connection to those sleazy parties that are happening upstate, because not only did he very quickly have exactly the kind of costume that Cruise's character needed, but he didn't even question it. Why do you need a tux, a mask, and a cape? And oh, you're one of those.
In the middle of the night.
And you have all this money. You're willing to pay $200 on top of the fee. Yeah, you're one of those
Dr.
weirdos.
Bill also has unlimited cash in that wallet throughout this film. What does he have, $1,000 in there? I mean, he just he's able to pay for the prostitute. He's able to pay for just everything.
In my mind, I've always envisioned that rich people have wallets like that. Mm-hmm. I don't know. There's probably no truth to that at all. But I assume if I meet George Clooney and take away his wallet, I'd be like, there's $8,000 in here. Thanks, George Clooney.
Okay, so he realizes that he's lost the mask.
Yes.
And that mask was only $35. I mean, maybe
again, it's $19.99.
All right, maybe that was a lot of money back then for a mask, but still, seems a little cheap. I don't know. So then he decides he's going to go back to the Sonata room and talk to Nick, but it's closed. He doesn't know where Nick is. So he finds out where he was staying, and he goes to it's like a hotel?
Yeah. Yeah, the hotel. He's in the lobby of the hotel, and a doorman played by Alan Cumming helps him.
Yeah.
And without making too much of a point of it, but it really needs to be pointed out. I mean, there's a scene earlier in the film where Bill is bullied by a group of young frat boys who are homophobic, and they throw homophobic slurs at him for no reason. And in this scene, Alan Cumming's character is clearly flirting with Tom Cruise. These two scenes, I mean, these are two things that have never happened and never will happen again in a Tom Cruise movie. Mm-hmm. He has always played, I mean, not, more than anything, it's not just that Cruise has always played these hyper-masculine characters, and you never question their sexuality. Even in Interview with the Vampire, where the character is supposed to be bisexual, and he wasn't in that film. But this is a movie where Cruise is playing a guy who, he is vulnerable, and I always love it when Cruise does that. He's not just vulnerable, he's kind of a bumbling fool in so many cases. Mm-hmm. He is he thinks he's the master of the universe. He thinks he's master of his domain, but he's not a good detective. He's, I mean, the fact that he can't even find the mask after the orgy, what a huge slip up that is. It's, again, I can't even tell you how much pleasure I take from watching a movie star who's one of the most iconic of my generation, probably like the John Wayne or the Clint Eastwood of my generation. And to see him in a film where he's acting as I would in this situation, when you watch those thrillers and it's a murder story and it's like, man, this guy's like leaving his thumbprints everywhere, and like, oh, he like can't even conceal the body, and he just, I love those kinds of movies because I'm thinking, if I ever made this kind of awful moral compromise, and I hope and pray I never do, this is relatable. And in this case, like with Dr. Bill, I'm like, yeah, this guy is making very human mistakes.
Yeah, and he keeps pulling out his
ID, like it's the badge that opens every door.
Registered, doctor card. And he shows it to Alan Cumming, and then Alan tells him, yeah, there was a guy. He checked out, and he had a black eye, and these guys took him, and I don't know where he went. And he's just like flirting with Dr. Bill the whole time.
It's fabulous. Yeah. Cumming is so funny in this scene. And the scene is funny just because Bill doesn't even seem completely aware that this guy is being so flirtatious with him, because Bill is in his Dr. Bill mode of like, look, I'm used to getting what I want. This is my badge. You're going to tell
information.
Me. Yeah.
So then he goes and gets a newspaper, I think. And
this is the scene at night.
Yeah.
Yeah, where he's being stalked by a man in the distance. Mm-hmm. And he gets a newspaper. He goes into this cafe at night to kind of hide from the person who was stalking him.
And the cover of the paper, it's the New York Post. It says,
Lucky to be alive.
Lucky to be alive. Mm-hmm. And then he sits down at a cafe and he reads about the death of like a former beauty queen.
Amanda Curran, yeah, mm-hmm. who he believes is the woman who tried to save him at the party.
Yes. And so then he gets a call from Victor.
He goes to the morgue.
Oh, yeah, he goes to the morgue. That's right. He goes to the morgue, and he's like, I'm her doctor.
Or am I jumping ahead? Has he gone to see Domino yet?
Oh, no, he has to go see Domino first.
Yeah, and he's...
yeah, you're right. He goes to Domino before he gets the newspaper. But Domino's not there, and it's her roommate.
Played by Faye Masterson. Very good in this.
He's like, he brings like a box of pastries or something,
chocolates
for her.
or something. I don't know. Yeah,
and he's like, it's Dr. Bill, and she's like, oh, you're Dr. Bill, and he's like, yeah. She's like, wow, thanks for being so nice to her. Do you want to come in? And the minute he walks into that apartment, I mean, they are just like wanting to get it on.
Yeah, it's back to Dr. Bill having this insane pull over anyone he's in a room with,
and he's just like feeling her up, and you can tell she's just like, I really want to do this, but she's like, I gotta tell you something. Domino she's found out she has HIV.
Yeah.
And I want to tell you because you were with her last night. And he doesn't tell her, no, we didn't do anything. He doesn't tell her anything.
Yeah,
he doesn't tell her that.
No, again, a very well played moment, because it goes from him being very playful and flirtatious with her, because he's like, whatever she's going to tell me, it's going to be something wonderfully dirty and it's going to be great. And and it's yet
like
another,
the worst news.
Another splash of cold water in his face. Yeah.
He's like, oh man, all right, that's not good. So then
Bye.
Bye. Yeah. Okay. Thanks. Bye. Never going to see you two again.
Yeah.
And then he gets the newspaper. He reads about the beauty queen. He goes to the hospital. Again, flashes his badge and lies and says he was her doctor. And the lady at the hospital is like, well, she died. So he goes into the morgue and sees her. And I found it weird because normally when they pull bodies out of those drawers, they're covered with a sheet. And it's just her, just totally naked. Which I thought, that's kind of a strange thing. Which maybe goes to your idea at the end about the whole premise of this film. Because there's no way. They always have sheets on them. Every time. And then they pull it back and it's like, is this the person?
Right.
That... is this the person? Can you identify the body?
Unless they're like, this is how she would have wanted it, as she was in life.
Oh my God. That's so awful.
Amanda really had a disdain for clothing.
Yeah. So he, it's very strange because he kind of like looks at her.
We think he's going to kiss the corpse.
Yeah, exactly.
It's very odd.
It's
the
very
coroner
odd.
is looking away, and he's having this moment where his face is getting closer and closer and closer.
And what? Does his phone ring?
As he's leaving, he's walking out, and the phone rings, and Victor wants to see him.
Yeah. Okay, so he goes back to Victor's house.
And let's talk right about that key moment: a red pool table.
A red
Victor
pool table.
Once again the color red. And by the way, pool is my game. I love pool. I played it for so much of my life. I'm really good at it. I miss playing it. Never in my life have I ever seen a red pool table. Never.
No, I don't think.
Yeah.
I think that was made for this movie.
I think so.
Especially.
Yeah. Well done, Mr. Kubrick.
Um,
So Victor, as to remind you, is played by the late, great Sidney Pollack, the award-winning director, and who's a wonderful character actor. And his scene with Cruz this is one of the, you could say this about a lot of scenes in this film, I suppose, but this is one of the key scenes in the film where this brotherly, maybe even like a quasi father-son relationship between the two of them, their relationship is grossly compromised by what is revealed, and ultimately Victor tells Dr. Bill, you were in a lot of danger the other night. I don't know
what. I know you were there.
I don't know how in the world you got there until I realized that piano player. Yeah. And the conversation sort of escalates. And then Bill does the smartest thing he's ever done in the film, which is he gets Victor to confess that the prostitute who, had that big showy moment of I will redeem you. He gets him to confess that, she was brought back to her apartment and all this stuff. And he says, well, if the whole thing was a charade, then how does a charade end up with somebody dead? Mm-hmm. And that's when Victor drops the bomb. Like, oh yeah, you know her. She was the one at the party, the one that you saved.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And
she was a drug addict, and that's how she died.
Dr. Bill has his back turned to him, and I love this. I mean, I'm very moved by it, honestly. Bill is trying to keep himself together, but this is destroying him.
Yeah, and this is where Victor just says, people die every day. You're like, wow, dude.
Until they don't, yeah.
Yeah, like, okay.
Que sera, kid.
That's why, I don't believe that in the beginning you asked, like, did he have feelings for Mandy, the prostitute? Or Amanda, whatever. And I said, no, because he's so callous and cold during this conversation with Dr. Bill that I just don't think, I think he treats all these women as just disposable.
No, I don't think he has feelings for her, but I do feel like this might be one that this could be the
one exception.
This could be.
No, he doesn't.
But if it was indeed Victor at the orgy looking at him, making eye contact, as you surmise, which I think is a really interesting idea. That could very well be it. He brings her to him when he's at the orgy. Oh. He's the creepy figure with that block face mask who brings her when she's wearing her peacock mask and nothing else to find him and to pull him away. I wonder if he's like, hey, Mandy, it's him.
We need to
Get him.
orchestrate.
Somehow we know
Somehow.
it's him. Get him out of here. He's going to get killed if he doesn't get out of here. You need to pull him aside and da-da-da.
We're going to do this whole thing because
I
to
mean,
save him.
rather than refer to the late Amanda Curran as a prostitute, I think we could call her a mistress. Perhaps she was his mistress.
Maybe
it's one of these situations where even the wife is like, like Victor's wife.
There's no way Victor's wife doesn't know he's messing around.
Yeah, or maybe like it's one of these situations like, well, as long as Victor's happy.
No, she's not saying that. She's saying as long as I get my, monthly allowance, I don't care.
You think like if Victor ever went down Enron style, she'd be like one of those ladies like, I'm used to a certain way of,
100%.
I'm used to a certain lifestyle.
Yes.
I love my parties where there's lights everywhere and Victor vanishes for hours at a time.
I get like a $20,000 a month like hair, nail, clothing budget. That's totally how she would be.
And I feel like we've really judged this character we only saw in one scene.
Well, there's no way she doesn't know these things.
You don't think?
No.
I mean, if this movie's telling us anything, is that, married couples, they sometimes keep things from each other.
I think I
wouldn't know what that's about, but, just throwing that out there.
Okay, since you're right, we saw Victor's wife for like 3 seconds.
Yes. I feel we can't judge her because we just don't know her.
No, we can't judge her, but I'm not judging anybody in this movie. I'm saying, I think...
It's okay if you do. They're fictional characters. Who cares?
Who cares? But I'm saying a woman like this who's married to a guy like that, even if she doesn't know the details, she knows shady things are happening, and she know but she's getting money. She has a way of life, so she's not going to say too much. That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
She's going to put up with a certain amount of like, okay, this boys will be boys type of situation because of all the perks. She's got a lot of perks. That's what I think. Yeah.
And then she's always like, he's gone for like an hour. And then Dr. Bill always shows up. And he's always sneaking this body-sized carpet out the back door. It's so funny. It keeps happening.
I wonder what it could be.
Yeah. Oh, well. I love this new tennis court he's putting in.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, so it ends. Yeah, the scene is it's a drawn out scene. I love it. The tension of it. Pollock is fantastic in this scene, so good, and Cruz is too. So Dr. Bill goes home, and we get this really nice long shot where he goes to the apartment. Everyone's asleep. The apartment is very much lived in, and he just hasn't been there. He sits down as any doctor would at the end of the day, and he gets out a can of Bud Light and slurps it down.
Okay.
I just love that because I'm like, I've never seen.
I'm like, what?
I haven't seen Cruz drink a beer in a movie in so long. I'm like, oh wow, he's like eating real food here.
And I mean, he's coming home in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
And just like chugging a beer. I don't know, like on an empty stomach. That just seems like not. I don't know.
How many calories in a beer? I don't drink beer, so I don't even know.
I'm not talking about the calories. I'm just thinking like, oh.
Is this like med school food? Like, oh man, back in my Nick Nightingale days, like
maybe
have some bro food.
I don't know.
3 a.m. beer.
3 a.m. beer just doesn't sound good. Okay. But then he goes into his bedroom where
Alice is asleep.
Yeah, and the mask.
The mask is perfectly placed on the pillow right next to her.
Yeah.
A lot of possibilities here, one of which is that Alice found the mask and was like looking at it, had placed it on the pillow and just kind of fell asleep and forgot about it. A possibility that because, did we mention that Dr. Bill went back to the house? Did we talk about that?
Oh no.
Yeah, we back.
Forgot.
Sorry, Vault listeners. There's a lot of events here. So one of the things that happens during Bill's venture out to find out what happens is he goes back to the house where the orgy took place. He stopped at the gate.
Yeah, he goes there right after he leaves the office.
Right. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Forgive us. Yeah, for overlooking that. And he's given an envelope
with his name on it, and everything's typed out.
Typed out, yes.
Which is like, oh, we kind of expected he would be coming.
Yeah,
back
we know.
here.
Yeah, because they know who he is, and it's like, look, like we give this out to everybody, but hey, you got another one of our threat notes, which is that dire consequences if you look into this matter any further. Very very vague, but extremely menacing and scary. So the other idea with the mask is that Alice fell asleep. One of the people from the party showed up at her apartment, put that there.
Oh, really?
If we're gonna look at this as a thriller, yeah. Or the idea that I've been entertaining since 1999, the mask isn't there. I don't think it's there. I think he sees the mask in the way you see, a representation of guilt after you think you're responsible for someone's murder.
Yeah, I kind of am going with that theory too, because Alice doesn't acknowledge it.
And it's a heck of a thing to not know. But, again, I think the film plays fair with this because she wakes up, she sees her husband bawling, and Cruz is really going for it here. She sees her husband bawling. Cruz gets in the fetal position and tells his wife, I'll tell you everything. And then it cuts to the next morning.
Yes.
And we see that Alice has
been crying.
Very upset. A detail that I'll get into later, but I'll kind of hint at
How much later? This is the end.
All right. Well, one of the mysteries of this film, which I wonder what he told her. We don't know.
Yeah,
so
right.
There's a lot of possibilities here
You're
about.
Right. We don't know what he told her.
We don't know it. We know. We see the look on her face. I think is a clear indication that whatever he told her, it was so upsetting and shattering. And she's like, oh, well, touche. I guess my naval officer story was not the most shocking thing that we can talk about.
I mean, literally, she could have cried over like one piece of his night.
There's all sorts of details.
It could have just been like the domino thing,
It's like the worst thing that happened. Like the body was right there, and then she told me that she loved me, and then Carl came in, and
yeah, it could have been Marion kissing him.
Yeah,
that could have been it.
That could have been all. Yeah, we don't know.
It could have been paying Domino for sex he didn't even get.
I wrote down in my notes like the two big questions is was she lying? Is her story of the naval officer true or not? That's a big question. The film does not tell us, and then we don't know what he told her. So it's again like I feel like the language of the film. And look, if you want to take this movie at face value, good luck. I don't think the movie works quite that way, but if you do, then all right, then maybe he just told her the entire plot of the film, and Kubrick is simply getting that great reaction shot of Kidman to indicate that. But I don't know. Because these characters are clearly not always telling each other the truth, and we've seen that in a demonstrative way.
That's a really good point, because I always just thought, oh, okay, we're just, he's not going to tell us everything we just saw.
Right.
Okay, and then I went here.
And then I went to the costume store, and then I ripped a $100 bill in half. I can't believe I did that, and I gave it to the cabbie.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, doesn't recall the entire... Yeah, but at the same time, again, it's Kubrick. His choices are deliberate. You just never know. So, the last scene of the film is morning. Our daughter Helena wants to go Christmas shopping. She's expecting us. We have to do it. So the last scene of the film takes place in this elaborate toy store. I guess it's
like a department store.
Like an FAO Schwartz, although or
a Macy's or something.
It looks a lot more claustrophobic than I remember FAO Schwartz. But whatever. They're walking around, and the little girl is looking at a teddy bear, and she also looks at
I want this. I want that.
At a fairy godmother. And
I've never been more annoyed with a child in a movie.
Oh, really? Oh,
yeah.
I think the daughter's adorable.
No, because I'm like, I want to hear what these two are going to say. And she keeps interrupting with her stupid toys.
Aw.
And no.
Because I go... this is what it's like every time I go with Beatrice.
Okay.
Like toy section.
But this is what it's like when you and I are trying to have
conversation.
a serious conversation, and we keep getting interrupted. And I'm like, I just want to
You really want to hear what Bill and Alice are saying.
Yeah,
I
really want to hear what they're saying.
Right.
And this kid is just in the way.
All right, so not to belabor it any longer. Final conversation of the film. They have a talk where she says, let's basically put this behind us.
No, he says, what do you want to do?
Ah.
Yeah, because he's we have a problem here. Or he's thinking we have a problem. Right? I guess.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of how I took it.
Yeah.
And he's like, so what do you want to do? And she's like, I think we should be grateful. I think we should be grateful for what we have, for what didn't happen. And I think we need to go home and get it on, basically. And that's
yeah, the last line in the movie, the last line in a Kubrick film is the fudge word. Oh, it's so great. The guy who directed Spartacus has his last movie that ends with the F dash 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 word. Oh, it's great.
Not that.
So, not that. Yeah. So, so I don't think this movie can be taken literally, because at the party, how on earth do they recognize Bill under that mask? It doesn't seem possible. It is obviously a dream, obviously a fantasy. There's no, even if they're like, that guy got here late and he missed the fish and chips. And no, clearly, whatever. he's in a mask and a hood. He looks as creepy and ominous as the rest of them. Perhaps that he got there late. And of course, as they say, like, you arrived in a cab, we have limos. Yeah, but still, there is an indication, if not an outright suggestion, that they know it's him. Yeah. And that, and that she knows it's him.
That they know it's him before he takes his mask off at the very last part of the party.
Right. And the coincidences, the two models, if you will, at the beginning of the film, who I suspect are also a part of the party and the party going, they tell Dr. Bill they're going to take him to where the rainbow ends. The Rainbow Room is the name of the costume shop. A very, I think, a clear indication that perhaps this is part of the fantasy. This was an idea that was planted in Bill's head. The whole costume shop incident. Bill has a hero complex because he's a doctor. There's nothing wrong with doctors. I'm not making a blanket statement. I just mean that, Bill is not only used to getting things done his way, but he's used to being the hero, the provider, the guy who's in charge of his whole life. So this whole thing of I'm ready to redeem him, it feels like a fantasy. Doesn't it? On some level, there's something very fantasy like it. The use of red is very disturbing because not only is it an indication of danger, clear indication of danger, but by the way, Domino's roommate, Bill's wife, the girl he saves, and also the girl who saves him, as well as his daughter, they all have red hair. Oh. What does that mean? That's interesting. That's a deliberate choice.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that's Faye Masterson, who plays Domino's roommate, who comes on in very red hair. So does Nicole Kidman. So does his daughter. So does the woman at the party who saves him and the woman at the party who he saves at the beginning of the film. Yeah. So I just feel like if you want to look at this film and take it at face value, I feel like this is where you understand why critics in 1999 are like, it lacks some things. Fine. I feel like because the movie has been, the film is explicitly about dreams and the effects of fantasies and the effects of, allowing superficial expectations and fantasies to.
Where does the dream start and end?
Great question.
That's my problem with your theory.
Why?
Is the whole thing a dream?
No. I think up to the point where Bill leaves. And
with the first phone call,
the first phone call rather,
yeah.
Because as well constructed as that scene is, and as again, it's kind of a madcap quality to the fact that she's throwing herself at him as her father's corpse is right there on the bed. That could even be a fantasy that he had about her. This could be like one of these patients, like, man, I've always had a thing for that guy's daughter. Like, oh, she's so hot. So he's having this fantasy on the cab ride over. Like, what if this was the moment where she threw him? Because again, what a male fantasy that is. Like, I don't want to be with Carl. I want to be with you. I love you. I love you. I love you. And of course, he meets a prostitute who, looks like Vanessa Shaw in New York.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, with all due respect to Vivian, but she puts Pretty Woman to shame. I mean, she looks gorgeous and glamorous, and this is a woman of the night, as they used to say. I mean, sure, movie. Yeah, no, I don't think anything happens. I think this is a guy who is shattered by the revelation that his wife gives him, and I think he's on this long odyssey, this mental.
So do you think his odyssey?
Cerebral
so
odyssey.
Do you think he's just like walking around New York thinking about all this stuff?
Yes.
He's just walking around having these thoughts.
And the echoes of the party, the echoes of the models coming on to him, the models wanting to have group sex with him, the models, and not to mention knowing that Victor is immoral and that he's in an immoral world of strangers. I think it's constructing this fantasy, this extended fantasy, which is every bit as elaborate and hurtful as the one that his wife revealed to him. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I think it screws with him because this is a guy who's had so much of his life go exactly as he wanted. And, it's this whole experience, as well as his wife's declaration, is what makes him go, wow, I've got it really good. Because look how quickly south this can go, just because of temptation, just because of the longing for adventure, the longing for something out of the normal. Look how badly my life can go if I travel past the Central Park West exit.
So, okay, I can see like the first part of him like leaving after that conversation and I can see how all that could be a fantasy, but then the day after that, where he's going back to all the places.
He goes back to his office.
You think he's just in his office?
I think he's just in his office
dreaming?
Thinking, because that's what we see him doing. He's thinking once again about Alice and the naval officer, and it's getting more and more graphic. So yeah,
this is a very elaborate fantasy.
Haven't you ever had elaborate fantasies? I have.
I don't think like awake though. Like he's awake this whole time thinking about this?
His eyes are wide shut. That's what a waking dream is.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, but then why does he go home and say, "I'll tell you everything"? Like that's real?
It could be because the man who died, whose daughter comes on to him. This maybe that did happen, or maybe it didn't happen the way we see it happen in the film. Maybe that was a mentor figure to him. Yeah. This is not an ironclad theory, obviously, but this is something I've been holding on to for a while, just because again, like the movie is explicit about this, and this, in a sense, this is neither here nor there, but it matters. It's based on a novel called Dream Story, Traumnovelle by Arthur Schnitzler, who is a theorist who had a lot of, I think, like Freud was somebody who he looked to enormously. In the book, its book was written in, I think, 1928, and it's weird because it takes place in Vienna, but it's almost scene for scene, Eyes Wide Shut. It's very faithful. And that story is equally ambiguous about some of its points, but it's also about the dream state versus reality and how, one can meld quickly into the other.
So when he tells his wife, "I'll tell you everything."
Yeah.
Do you think he's just telling her his fantasy?
Who knows? We don't know what he tells her. Who knows? Yeah. Because
he seems like when they're walking through that department store at the end, and he's like, "What are we gonna do?"
I mean, that's the thing. Is he talking to her? I mean, if we're going to take this thing at face value, is he talking to her about this massive conspiracy that he's uncovered?
No, I don't think he's talking about that. I think he's talking about their relationship.
Yeah, but at the same time, when she's saying, like, maybe we should be grateful that we survived, that could also, again, if you take it literally, they're talking about the orgy, they're talking about the dead and Mandicurin. But as I'm suggesting, as what you're saying, I agree. I think there's just talking about, like, man, like you and I, we're getting a little carried away with our fantasies, and it's intruding upon our real life. And of course, her final line, as much as it's a shock line and a kind of a punch line, it's extremely practical. Yeah. Marital advice.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, we need to go home and just, like, take care of each other.
Yes.
Yeah. Interesting. All right. So, you don't think he cheats on her in this film?
No, I don't think there's well, we've certainly encountered couples in our life who said that they've had emotional affairs. If that's what this is, that's what this is. I remember you challenged me before we watched the movie. She's like, he kisses people. I'm like, he doesn't kiss anybody. He's fit. No, you're right. He does. He does. All right.
Like two people.
All right. It's not intercourse. It's not exactly what I'd call an affair, but fine. Yes, he does. He does kiss people.
I wouldn't call it an affair, but I would call it.
You want to call it an emotional affair?
Cheating.
Betrayal.
I would call it
cheating.
I would call it betrayal.
I would think of sex. All right. I mean, even oral sex, cheating. What I think what happens here, I mean, to examine what Dr. Bill does on a scene-to-scene basis, he is tempted, again, if you're going to take this literally, he is tempted in every scene. It's more and more and more. It's like he's going further and further down Dante's Inferno.
But if this whole thing is him just, like, having a dream, then I don't think there was a betrayal. Just like I don't think her telling him about the naval officer.
No, but the fantasy hurt, and it hurt him in the way that his fantasy, whatever it is that he tells her, clearly rattles her as well.
I'm not saying that he doesn't have a right to be rattled over what she said, but I also think, wow, he took that to an extreme, But because he was interrupted by the phone call, I think if they had finished that conversation, there would have been maybe a healthier conclusion. But they never got to finish it. So, I don't know. Who knows? Who knows what would have happened?
Yeah, I mean, he's constantly being interrupted. I mean, that's the thing I love about this character. There's an element of film noir here. Film noir is defined by a lot of things, one of which is that it has an unreliable protagonist. Dr. Bill is not doing the right thing. Frequently, he's about to do the wrong thing, and he's constantly interrupted. even at the orgy, sir, there's a matter of the cab driver. Like he's constantly being interrupted from something he's about to do that he probably shouldn't be doing.
Right.
And it starts with his...
Don't you think that is more of a dream type thing? Because in real life, if you were faced with all of these temptations, I don't think like the odds of them being interrupted every time, like 100% of the time you're given an out, I don't think that would have happened. And out of like the phone ringing.
Well, another question.
Or someone interrupting you.
The thing that bothers me too is how much, because again, like the relationship between dreams and reality. Alice's story when he returns from the orgy bothers me because it's a clear correlation in some way to what happened to him. Mm-hmm. I don't quite understand it, but it bothers me because the imagery that she's describing is what we just saw him go through at the orgy. Although you could say it's basically her putting herself in that situation, which bothers me even more because I'm thinking, was she there? Was she dreaming about what happened to him? Was she seeing herself in his place? There's something going on with her relationship to his journey that I don't completely understand, or perhaps don't even understand at all. Fine, but that's also something that bothers me.
Yeah, there's a lot of unanswered questions.
But dreams are like that, right? You wake up, and while you're having them, they're ironclad. They make a lot of sense. You're
like, I'm going to remember this when I wake up because this is important.
And this is a line out of a play I did called The Monkey's Paw, where my character described how when you're having a dream, it's it makes sense, and you wake up and you go, I was the king of the tuna fish. Weird. And you try to explain to someone, you go, oh, that's really weird. Well, dreams are like that sometimes. They make sense while you're having them, and you wake up and you realize, oh, like the logic was not there, but while you were having them, the emotion was there, the logic was there, the world made sense. Mm-hmm. And I feel like there's a lot of that in this film. There's aspects of this movie that just do not hold up unless you look at them as a dream and you go, oh yeah, because haven't we all had sexual dreams where it's like the eroticism of it made sense in the moment, and you're going, why would he go to that apartment, and why would Domino's roommate really flagrantly throw? I mean, yeah, it's Tom Cruise, but still, why would she throw himself? There's something really unnatural about that scene, for example. It is like a sex fantasy, like a sex dream,
right?
And then even the way it ends, it's like it's not just that it, not only is it coitus interruptus, but I mean, he is once again like Saved by the Bell, this guy.
Yeah, exactly. That's
what
I'm
a great
saying.
fantasy. This guy is constantly avoiding every, disease, murder. like Dr. Bill, like yeah, I get these fantasies. So
but
wow.
He also has no sex.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because he's kind of square.
Yeah.
Again, and I think this is kind of a reflection of Kubrick's worldview. Respectfully, I never knew him, never met him, but from what we know about Kubrick, there were traditional values in his life, and I feel like, certainly perhaps his views of marriage and fidelity and the longevity of marriage are all over this film. It's a personal film. All of his films are, but this one feels especially personal because it's about something that's so simple, but at the same time so complex. Why do people stay together? What are the things that make people go apart? Can you have an inner life that is different or even private, even though you're sharing a life with someone who's right next to you most of the time? Can you have that inner cerebral life of adventure and sexuality, these fantasy lives? Can you do that? Can you sleep next to someone and have secrets? Can you keep those secrets? Is that a good thing to have? I feel like this movie is asking these questions, and they're good questions because if you've been married for someone for a period of time, it does occur to you like what are the secrets that I keep? What are the, you do kind of compartmentalize these things. And not only that, the movie is telling us like, no, it's good to be open. It's good to be honest. Intimacy isn't just sexual, it is psychological.
Yeah, and she says that when she's telling him the Cape Cod story. She's like, you'd never felt more dear to me, is what she said.
And clearly it's one of the things that breaks him. He cannot handle that story.
Yeah, but that part, it's an interesting choice of words, because I know that none of this was ad-libbed. Like, Kubrick would not have stood for that. So the fact that she says, like, you've never felt more dear to me and we're making plans for our future, it just felt very real. Just her whole story. I agree with you. I think this movie needed more Nicole Kidman, and I don't mind Tom Cruise's performance, but I don't know. She seems to be the heart of it.
Yeah, and it's fine. I mean, if anything, it's one of these films that perhaps they recognized how alluring and also how compelling this character is. So if anything, the moments in the film where she's not there, it's just like, it's such a breath of fresh air when she returns. There's a scene that's disturbing because of the voiceover that plays over, but it's the scene where Dr. Bill is watching Alice tutor his daughter. And, you know, it's this really sweet moment where the little girl is learning about math and whatnot. And Alice is, she kind of glances at Bill, and they have this nice moment. Like, it's a great little moment, but he's remembering her describe the dream, and the dream is so disturbing in contrast with her having this nice moment with her daughter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Again, how the dream life intrudes upon real life.
Yeah.
In a very demonstrative way. Yeah.
Yeah. So much so that Dr. Bill can't keep it together.
No, he's got to grab a Budweiser out of the fridge. That's like his go-to. It's either an orgy or a Budweiser.
Okay, well, do you have any other final thoughts? Because I know you think this movie's perfect. I know you wouldn't change anything. 5 stars, all that.
I'm so predictable. No, I do love this film. Kubrick's his greatest film is probably 2001: A Space Odyssey. And that was a film that I've seen it so many times because every year I would show it to my students, and it would always have this very divisive and very welcome reaction from different students in different ways. So I think 2001: A Space Odyssey is his greatest film, but this is my favorite. I've been obsessed with this movie for a long time. I continue to be. I'm always looking for new things. There's so much mystery to this film. I always perk up when someone has a new Eyes Wide Shut story. The one that really made me happy, I'll tell you really quickly, there was an unauthorized biography of Tom Cruise that came out about 10 or so years ago, and it was total tabloid fodder crap. It was just, even as someone who's a fan of Cruise, I'm reading through this like, wow, like not only is this inaccurate, this is not fair, and there's no citing some of these stories. It got to Eyes Wide Shut, and one of the things that this book claimed said like, it's true, Harvey Keitel was cast in the role of Victor, and he was fired from the film. And according to the book, he was fired because, to quote the book, there was a masturbation scene that literally got out of hand. That's what was in the book. Wow. I'm thinking, what was that about? But I'm also thinking, like, wait a second. Like, I've never heard that before. And where did they get that information? And you're not going to cite anybody? Nothing. It just said that. So I thought, like, that's. I mean, for one thing, an insult to Harvey Keitel, as well as, the movie and et cetera, et cetera. A couple of years ago, Gary Oldman is doing this radio interview, and he talks about different directors he wished he could have worked with. And Kubrick comes up and he says, this is the story that he heard about Eyes Wide Shut from Harvey Keitel. And I thought, well, this is great because Oldman has no reason to lie about this. He says what Harvey Keitel told him was that Kubrick made him walk through a door 86 times. And after like the 86th take, clearly Keitel was not giving Kubrick what he wanted. And Kubrick's like, again. And finally, Keitel looked at him and go, you're effing crazy. And he walked off the set. And it's like, that's fantastic. And that's obviously what happened. And Keitel, great actor, but I suspect a lot of we know a lot of actors who had a hard time working with Kubrick because of his demands for perfectionism and for his multiple takes. I think this is one of these films, like, I hope in my lifetime there will be a documentary about this film or a definitive book, because right now so much of what happened in that 400 days of shooting is mere speculation. And at the time, Cruise and Kidman spoke about what a rewarding, what a great experience it was. And you look at the film, it's like, that's amazing to think they spent so much time on a movie this troubling. Although, again, it's 400 days. The movie's 2.5 hours. It's like, how many times do they do those scenes? How many? Last night I was really watching the extras because, like, in the opening scene where Nicole Kidman is dancing with the Hungarian, I'm watching those extras thinking, like, what take was this? It was like take 47. Their feet are in agony. Like, they're just like, oh, Nicole again with her monologue. Like, and I also wonder about the orgy scene too, because oh my gosh, because this movie is just shrouded, just cloaked in secrecy. So I'm sure, and it was shot in England. So I'm sure those extras are like, I always wanted to be in a Kubrick film, but I did not realize it would be that kind of Kubrick film. I didn't know he would want me to do this in a Kubrick film. I do wonder what their stories are like. Yeah, so this movie it's like a unicorn to me. I'm fascinated by it. I think it's so rare and special. And compared to everything, because 99 was a great year. That was the year of The Matrix, The Sixth Sense, American Beauty, which I've never cared for, Election, Fight Club, Office Space, so many great movies, Magnolia, so many great movies came out that year. But for me, this was like, this is the best film of 1999. This is one of the best films I've ever seen. I'm going to continue to, I turn 45 soon. I hope when I'm 50, I could watch this movie and continue to discover things, because this movie is just, there's so much I think we have yet to discover about it.
All right. Well, we would also love to hear your thoughts. If you saw this movie, loved it, hated it, what are your theories? Because clearly Barry wants to know.
Yeah, I would be very interested. Definitely. Yeah.
Have you thought of something we haven't thought of? Tell us.
If this is your least favorite Kubrick film, and a lot of people feel that way, I want to hear that too. I really do. I welcome that conversation. Great films, great conversations, whether you love the film or not. So, yeah, please.
All right. Well, that concludes our lengthy discussion of Eyes Wide Shut. Good night, everyone.
Good night, everyone. Don't forget the password is Fidelio.